A woman stood in front of an open casket in one of Atlanta's most prestigious churches. She was dressed in designer black, every hair perfect, every piece of jewelry expensive. She looked like someone who had everything figured out, but she was completely falling apart. Her whole body was shaking. Her hands covered her face. The tears coming down were the kind that don't care about makeup or image or reputation. They were the tears of someone who just lost everything that mattered. Her mother was gone. And in that moment, with all that money, with all that power, with all that success, none of it could save her. None of it could hold her up. She was alone in a crowded church full of people who were supposed to love her, and she felt completely, utterly, devastated alone. Marcus Johnson stood at the back of the church, holding his 7-year-old daughter's hand. He was still in his work clothes, a faded blue security guard uniform with a coffee stain on the pocket. He hadn't had time to change. He never had time for much of anything these days. The funeral was for someone he didn't even know. He was only here because Miss Diane, the woman who watched his daughter Kai after school, had asked him to come. Miss Diane was the kind of person who did favors for everybody, and everybody did favors for her. That's just how things worked in their neighborhood. Marcus had planned to sit in the very back, stay quiet, pay his respects, leave. He had to work the night shift starting at 7 and he needed to pick up overtime. Money was always short. It was always short. That's when he saw her. She was standing near the casket, dressed in all black, her shoulders shaking with sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. Her face was covered by her hands, but Marcus could see she was breaking. Not the careful, controlled crying people do at funerals. This was raw. This was real. This was a woman whose whole world had just stopped spinning. She looked completely alone. There were people around her, friends, family members, people who should have been supporting her. But she looked like she was the only person in the room, like no one could reach her, like she was drowning in front of everybody and nobody could help. Marcus had seen that look before. He'd seen it in his own mirror. His hand tightened on Kai's small hand. "Stay here, baby," he said quietly to his daughter. "Don't move, I'll be right back." Marcus walked toward the woman at the casket. He didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't the kind of man to get involved in other people's business. He barely had the energy to handle his own business, but something about the way she was crying made him move. When he got close, he could see her better. She was a woman in her early 30s, with rich dark brown skin and beautiful features that were twisted with pain. Her hair was styled perfectly. Her clothes were expensive. He could tell that much even though he didn't know anything about fashion. Everything about her screamed that she had money, had resources, had a life that was completely different from his. But right now, she just looked like someone who was hurt. "Excuse me," Marcus said softly. She didn't look up. She didn't seem to hear him. He placed a gentle hand on her elbow, not pushing, just letting her know he was there. She looked up and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. For a moment, she looked at him like she didn't understand what was happening, like she was looking at him from underwater, through thick glass, from very far away. "You're alone," Marcus said simply. It wasn't a question. She started and her voice broke. She couldn't finish. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a tissue. He'd learned long ago to always carry tissues. Being a single father meant you were always prepared for tears. She took the tissue with a shaking hand. For several minutes, neither of them said anything. Marcus just stood there, his hand still gentle on her arm while she cried. He looked toward the casket and saw an older woman's body lying there, peaceful-looking, with flowers all around her. "Your mother?" he asked quietly. The woman in black nodded. She couldn't speak. The crying started again, harder this time. Marcus did something that surprised himself. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. It was bold. It was something a stranger shouldn't do, but it felt necessary. She needed to know that she wasn't alone in that moment, that somebody saw her pain and wasn't going to leave her standing there by herself. She collapsed against him. Her whole body shook with sobs. His security guard uniform, the faded blue cloth, got soaked with her tears. Marcus just held her. He didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Sometimes people just need to be held while they fall apart. When her crying finally slowed down, she pulled away from him slightly, keeping her eyes down. She looked embarrassed, like she'd done something wrong by breaking down in front of a stranger. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her face. "I don't know what I was thinking. I don't even know you." "Marcus," he said. "Marcus Johnson." "Elise," the woman said quietly. "Elise Coleman." "It's nice to meet you, Elise," Marcus said, and he meant it even in the horrible circumstances. "The pain you're feeling right now, that's love. Your mother was lucky to have someone who loved her that much." Elise looked up at him then. Her eyes were still wet with tears, but something changed in her expression. She looked at him like she was really seeing him for the first time. And Marcus realized that she was seeing a man in a faded security guard uniform with a coffee stain on his shirt, holding a tissue in one hand, and wearing the kind of empathy that comes from real experience with loss. She didn't look at him with pity. She looked at him with recognition. "Did you lose someone?" she asked. "My wife," Marcus said. 7 years ago, my daughter was just a baby." Elise's eyes filled with fresh tears, but this time they were tears for him. "I'm so sorry." "The pain gets different," Marcus told her. "Not smaller, different. You learn how to carry it instead of being crushed by it." They stood together in silence for another moment. Behind them, other people were starting to gather. Family members, probably hers. But for that moment, it was just Marcus and Elise and the weight of loss they both understood. One of the family members approached them. A woman in her 60s, dressed impeccably, who looked like she could be a relative. "Elise, honey, we need to take some family photos now," the woman said. "Come on." Elise squeezed Marcus's arm gently. "Thank you," she said, "for not leaving me standing here alone." "I work at Carter Security on Peachtree Road," Marcus said quickly before she could walk away. He didn't know why he was telling her this. He was breaking his own rules about not getting involved, but something about her made him want her to know she could find him again if she needed to. "If you ever need to talk, about grief, about loss, about anything, I'm usually there." Elise nodded slowly. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but the family member was pulling her away. As she was led toward a group of relatives, she looked back at him once. Their eyes met across the church, and something passed between them. An understanding. A connection formed in a moment of shared pain. Then she was gone, absorbed into the crowd of black suits and sad faces. Marcus stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked back to where his daughter Kai was waiting. She was sitting in a pew, swinging her little legs, completely unfazed by the funeral around her. She was 7 years old and already knew how to sit quietly when she needed to. "Can we go now, Daddy?" she asked, looking up at him. "Yeah, baby," Marcus said. "We can go now." As they walked out of the church, Marcus didn't look back at the funeral. But he couldn't stop thinking about Elise Coleman, about the way she'd looked at him when they connected over shared pain, about the desperation in her eyes when she realized she wasn't alone. He had a feeling he was going to see her again. He had no idea how right he was going to be. Life went back to normal, sort of. Marcus worked his security job, sometimes picking up shifts that ran past midnight. He would drop Kai off at Miss Diane's house at 6:30 in the morning before his shift started. He would pick her up at 5:30 in the evening when he finished. They would go home to their small 2-bedroom apartment in southeast Atlanta. He would make dinner, usually something simple like rice and beans or pasta or the chicken breast he bought on sale at the grocery store. They would eat. Kai would do her homework. He would put her to bed. Then he would either sleep or work on the freelance security consulting work he did on the side to make extra money. This was his life. It was small, but it was stable. It was honest. It was what he could give his daughter right now. He tried not to think about Elise Coleman. He tried not to wonder if she was okay, if the pain of losing her mother had eased at all, if she was surviving the way he had survived the loss of his wife. It was 3 weeks after the funeral when he saw her again. He was working at Carter Security, sitting at the front desk monitoring the building's security cameras. It was a slow night. The building was mostly empty. Marcus was doing his job, but his mind was wandering. He was thinking about whether he could afford to send Kai to summer camp this year, or if it was going to be another summer of her staying with Miss Diane. Then the elevator dinged. A woman stepped out into the lobby. For a moment, Marcus didn't recognize her. She looked so different. She was wearing a sharp business suit, her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup was flawless. She looked powerful. She looked like someone used to being in control. But then she looked toward the security desk, and their eyes met. It was Elise. Her entire expression changed. Recognition bloomed across her face. She walked toward the security desk, moving with a purpose that suggested she owned the building. "Marcus," she said, a small smile appearing on her face. "You work here." "I do," Marcus said, standing up from his desk. "Welcome. I didn't know you'd be coming by." "I have meetings in the building," Elise said. "I'm meeting with some business partners on the 18th floor." Marcus processed this information. She had meetings in this building, which meant she had business, which probably meant she had money, probably a lot of it. It made sense looking at her now. Everything about her screamed money and success. He was an idiot for not realizing it at the funeral, but grief had a way of making everything equal. Death didn't care about money. "Are you doing better?" Marcus asked. "After your mother?" Elise's smile faded slightly. "Some days better than others," she said. "But yes, I'm managing. Your words that day helped more than you probably realize." "I'm glad," Marcus said, and he meant it. "How's your daughter?" Elise asked. Marcus was surprised she remembered him mentioning Kai. "She's good, growing too fast. One day they're a baby and the next day they're in second grade wondering why their dad is getting old." Elise laughed. It was a real laugh, genuine and warm. It transformed her whole face. Marcus realized she probably didn't laugh much anymore. Grief had that effect. "I should get to my meeting," Elise said, but she didn't move, like she didn't want to leave the conversation. "But it was really good to see you, Marcus, really good." "You too," Marcus said. She turned to walk toward the elevators, then stopped. She turned back around. "What time do you finish your shift?" she asked. 6 in the morning, Marcus said. "Are you free tomorrow evening?" Elise asked. "For dinner. I'd like to properly thank you for what you did at my mother's funeral. I know it was just a kind gesture, but it meant everything to me." Marcus was about to say no. He didn't have time for dinner dates. He barely had time for his daughter. Getting involved with someone like Elise, someone who clearly had money and success and a whole different world, seemed like a recipe for complications he didn't need. But then he thought about how alone she'd looked at that funeral, how broken she'd been, how his simple act of being there for a stranger had meant something to her. "Sure," he heard himself say, "tomorrow evening I'd like that." Elise gave him her phone number so he could text her an address. Then she headed toward the elevators, and Marcus watched her go, wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. He had no idea that this simple dinner would set off a chain of events that would change both of their lives forever. Marcus just agreed to go on a dinner date with Elise Coleman. He didn't know that she was about to become one of the most important people in his life. He didn't know that she was hiding something massive from him. He thought he was helping a grieving woman who'd lost her mother, but Elise had lost more than just a mother at that funeral. She'd lost something else, something that changed everything about her situation. And when Marcus found out the truth about who Elise really was, his entire world was going to shift on its axis. Before you keep watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. This story is about to get extremely complicated. Leave a comment and tell me, would you have helped Elise at the funeral, or would you have stayed out of a stranger's grief? Now let's continue the story. Marcus borrowed money from his coworker to buy a new shirt. A real shirt, not the security guard uniform, not something with stains. He'd never done anything like this before. He'd been a widower for 7 years. Dadding, if you could even call it that, had never been part of his life. He barely had time to eat, let alone date. He arranged for Miss Diane to watch Kai overnight. He told her he had an extra security job. He didn't mention the dinner. He wasn't sure what this was. He didn't know how to talk about it. The restaurant Elise had recommended was upscale, the kind of place where Marcus felt underdressed even in his borrowed new shirt. But Elise was already there when he arrived, sitting at a table by the window, and when she saw him, her whole face lit up. "Hi," she said, standing to greet him. She hugged him, and Marcus was struck by how different she felt outside of the grief context. She felt lighter, not happy but less crushed by sadness. They ordered food. They talked about nothing important at first. Elise asked about Kai, and Marcus found himself telling her stories about his daughter, funny stories, frustrating stories, stories about how smart she was and how much she dreamed of things he couldn't afford to give her. Elise listened like she actually cared, like his story and his daughter's story mattered to her. Then over dessert, Elise did something unexpected. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Something I haven't told anyone except my family and my closest friends." Marcus put down his fork. "Okay," he said cautiously. "My mother didn't just die," Elise said quietly. "I mean, she did. She had a heart attack. But what I didn't tell you at the funeral is what my mother was, who my mother was." Marcus waited. He could see this was difficult for her. "My mother was Catherine Coleman," Elise said. "She founded Coleman Technologies in 1992. It's one of the largest tech companies in the country, worth billions of dollars." Marcus processed this. Coleman Technologies. He'd heard of that company. He'd seen their ads. He didn't know they were led by someone named Coleman, but he wasn't exactly following the tech industry. "When my mother died," Elise continued, "the company came to me. I became the CEO. At 32 years old, I became responsible for a company worth $8 billion, employing over 30,000 people." She let that sink in. "I was at the funeral," Elise said, "sitting in front of thousands of people from the company, the industry, the media, and all I could feel was alone. My mother died. I was standing there trying to be strong for everyone else, and inside I was falling apart. And then you came and you just held me. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care that I'm supposedly this powerful CEO. You just saw someone hurting and you helped." Marcus sat in silence for a moment, trying to process what she'd just told him. Elise Coleman was a billionaire CEO. That explained the expensive suit, the business meetings, the way she carried herself with such authority. "I didn't know," Marcus said finally. "I know," Elise said. "That's why I'm telling you now, because I think we could be friends. And I can't be friends with someone without them knowing the truth about who I am." "Okay," Marcus said slowly. "So you're a billionaire CEO." "Yes," Elise said. "And I have no idea what I'm doing. And my company is falling apart because I don't have the experience my mother had. And I'm terrified every single day that I'm going to fail and let down all those thousands of people who work for me." She said it like she was confessing a secret, like admitting she was scared was the most vulnerable thing she could do. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "You're going to be fine," he said, "because you care about doing the right thing. I can see that. That's more than most people have." "How do you know?" Elise asked. "Because you cried at your mother's funeral," Marcus said. "Because you remembered I have a daughter. Because you got my phone number and invited me to dinner even though I'm a security guard and you're a CEO. People who don't care about what's right don't do those things. They just make power plays and forget about people." Elise squeezed his hand. For the first time since her mother died, he could see hope in her eyes, like maybe she wasn't going to have to do this alone. And Marcus realized something important. He wasn't just helping a grieving woman anymore. He was helping someone carry an impossible burden, someone who had everything that money could buy but was still completely alone. He understood that now, because he was alone too. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Elise became inseparable. It wasn't romantic at first. It was friendship. It was Elise calling him at 3 in the morning because she was panicking about a board meeting. It was Marcus picking her up from her office when she couldn't handle driving home. It was Elise taking Kai to get ice cream on Saturdays, and Kai telling him she really liked the nice lady. It was becoming each other's safe place in a world that was demanding too much from both of them. And then one evening, everything shifted. They were sitting on the roof of Elise's apartment building. The Atlanta skyline stretched out beneath them, all lights and possibility. Kai was asleep in Elise's guest room downstairs. It was just the two of them and the night sky. "I need to tell you something," Elise said. She was sitting close to him on the bench they were sharing. "Okay," Marcus said. He was getting used to Elise telling him important things. "I need your help," she said. "With the company, with everything. I've been running Coleman Technologies for 2 months and I'm drowning. The board is getting impatient. The shareholders are questioning whether I have what it takes. I need someone I can trust. Someone who will tell me the truth instead of telling me what I want to hear." "Elise," Marcus said carefully, "I'm a security guard. I don't know anything about running a tech company." "But you know about people," Elise said. "You know about honesty. You know about carrying responsibility. My mother had advisors and board members and consultants, but she only trusted people who had her best interests at heart, not their own. I need someone like that. I need you." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He was thinking about Kai. He was thinking about his security job and the stability it provided. He was thinking about how scared he was to fail. "What would that even look like?" he asked. "I could bring you on as a consultant," Elise said, "to the company, to help me navigate the politics and the personalities. You'd make more money than you're making now, probably a lot more, and I need you." The last 3 words hung in the air between them. "I have to think about it," Marcus said. But he already knew what he was going to do. He was going to take the risk, because Elise needed him. Because maybe, for the first time since his wife died, he had the chance to be part of something bigger than just survival. He just didn't know yet how high the stakes were going to be. Marcus started working for Coleman Technologies on a Monday morning. He wore the new suit Elise insisted on buying him. He felt like a fraud. He walked into a building that employed 30,000 people and took an elevator to the 42nd floor where the executive offices were located. He passed through glass doors and into a world he didn't know how to navigate. Elise was waiting for him. "Welcome to Coleman Technologies," she said, smiling, but her smile was strained. Her eyes looked exhausted. "How are you?" Marcus asked, seeing past the professional facade. "Terrified," Elise said honestly. "I got a call from the board this morning. They're questioning my ability to lead. One of the board members specifically asked if I'd considered stepping down." "What did you tell them?" Marcus asked. "That I'd think about it," Elise said. "But the truth is I can't step down. If I do, the company goes to my uncle, and he'll destroy everything my mother built." She led him to her office. It was massive, with floor-to-ceiling windows showing all of downtown Atlanta. Her desk was organized and clean. Everything about it screamed power and control, but Marcus could see through it now. He knew her. He could see how much work this all was for her. "Show me," Marcus said. "Show me what's actually happening with the company." For the next 8 hours, Elise walked him through the situation. Coleman Technologies was successful on paper, but underneath the success, there were problems. The company was bleeding executives. 3 of the top leaders had quit in the past month. Key projects were behind schedule. There were rumors of insider trading and corruption in the higher ranks. "Everyone thinks it's because I took over," Elise said, frustration clear in her voice. "They think I'm incompetent, but the truth is my mother was making deals that weren't ethical, and now I have to figure out how to fix them without destroying the company or revealing what she did." "That's not your job," Marcus said. "What do you mean?" Elise asked. "Your mother made those choices," Marcus said. "You didn't. You're not responsible for cleaning up her mess if it means compromising yourself. You're responsible for moving forward with integrity." "But if I don't fix it," Elise said, "thousands of people lose their jobs. The company collapses." "And if you keep lying to cover it up," Marcus said, "you destroy yourself and eventually the company anyway. You're just delaying the inevitable." Elise sat back in her chair. "So what do you think I should do?" Tell the truth, Marcus said. Tell the board what you found. Tell them what your mother did. Tell them that you're going to fix it going forward. Fire the people involved in the corruption. Rebuild from something real instead of something built on lies. They'll destroy me, Elise said quietly. The board, the media, my mother's friends. They'll destroy my reputation. Maybe, Marcus said, but you'll be able to look yourself in the mirror. And eventually, people will respect you for doing the hard thing instead of the easy thing. Elise was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at him. I want to do this, she said, but I can't do it alone. Will you help me? Will you actually help me, not just as a consultant, but as someone I trust? Marcus thought about his daughter. He thought about what kind of example he wanted to set for her. He thought about the importance of integrity and doing the right thing even when it was hard. Yeah, he said, I'll help you. The board meeting happened on a Thursday morning. Elise sat at the head of the table with 30 board members arranged around her. She was wearing a sharp black suit, and her hair was styled perfectly, but Marcus could see her hands shaking as she held the papers detailing her mother's corruption. I've called this meeting to inform you of some serious ethical violations within the company, Elise said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. These violations occurred under my mother's leadership. Today, I'm taking full responsibility for fixing them. She laid out the evidence, the unethical deals, the payments to board members in exchange for favorable votes, the insider trading that had enriched certain executives while harming others. It was a disaster. It was career-ending. It was honest. The room erupted. Board members shouted. One man stood up and said Elise was lying about her own mother to cover her own incompetence. Another demanded she resign immediately. The chaos was deafening. But Elise didn't back down. She provided evidence for everything. She named names. She offered solutions. She made it clear that she wasn't asking permission. She was informing them of what she decided to do. By the end of the meeting, half the board was demanding her resignation. The other half was sitting in stunned silence. And one man, the only board member who'd been her mother's friend and personal confidant, had walked out without saying a word. That was the moment Marcus realized that this situation was more dangerous than he'd understood. After the meeting, they went back to Elise's office. That was a disaster, Elise said, sitting down heavily in her chair. That was honest, Marcus said. There's a difference. The difference is that half of those people are about to try to destroy me, Elise said. And the man who walked out is probably calling a lawyer right now. She was right. Within 24 hours, the board member who'd walked out, a man named Richard Hammond who'd been close with Elise's mother, filed a lawsuit against her. He claimed she was slandering Catherine Coleman and destroying the company to cover her own incompetence. The media picked it up immediately. By that evening, the headline across every news outlet in Atlanta read, "New CEO accuses dead mother of corruption. Is she trying to save the company or destroy it?" And that's when things got really dangerous. It started small. Emails to Elise's personal account telling her she was a fool and her mother would be ashamed. Then it escalated to emails telling her she should resign before something worse happened. Then someone left a dead rat outside her apartment building with a note that said back off or else. Marcus wanted her to go to the police, but Elise was afraid. If I go to the police, it becomes public, she said. It becomes part of the story. It looks like I'm not capable of handling my own situation. It looks like someone is threatening you, Marcus said, which is serious. But Elise was stubborn. She was determined to handle this on her own terms. Then came the incident at the office. Marcus was working late with Elise on a proposal for how to restructure the company when a fire alarm went off in the building. They evacuated with everyone else, standing on the street while the fire department arrived. They found no fire. It was a false alarm, the fire chief told them, but someone pulled the alarm from the executive floor, deliberately. That's when Marcus realized that this wasn't just about business anymore. Someone was trying to scare Elise into backing down. Someone was willing to put thousands of people at risk in a building just to make a point. That night, sitting in Elise's apartment, Marcus made a decision. "I'm going to find out who's behind this," he said. "How?" Elise asked. "I'm a security professional," Marcus said. "I know how to investigate. I know how to follow the money, how to track patterns. Let me use those skills." Elise was reluctant, but she agreed. For the next week, Marcus worked during the day as a consultant for Coleman Technologies, and at night he investigated. He went through security footage from the building. He talked to employees without letting them know he was investigating. He followed the paper trail of contracts and payments and discovered something shocking. The person orchestrating the threats against Elise wasn't just Richard Hammond. It was Richard Hammond and 3 other board members and executives who'd been benefiting from Catherine Coleman's unethical deals. They stood to lose millions if Elise reformed the company, so they were working together to scare her into either backing down or resigning. They'd created an entire conspiracy to protect their own interests. Marcus just discovered that Elise is in danger. Multiple people are working together to threaten her and force her to resign from Coleman Technologies. But here's the thing, Elise doesn't know the full extent of the threat. She doesn't know that people she trusts have turned against her. She doesn't know how far some people will go to protect millions of dollars. And Marcus is about to learn something that will change everything between him and Elise. He's about to discover that this conspiracy goes deeper than just the company. It touches Elise's family. It touches her mother's death. And it's going to force him to make a choice between his love for Elise and his responsibility to do what's right. You have to keep watching to see how Marcus handles this discovery, to see what he does with the information he's uncovered, to understand how deep this conspiracy really goes. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button now. This story is about to get dangerous. Leave a comment and tell me, would you tell Elise the truth about the conspiracy, even if it would hurt her? Now let's continue the story. Marcus had evidence of the conspiracy, but he didn't know what to do with it. He could go to the police. He could take it to the FBI. He could leak it to the media. But each option had consequences that he wasn't sure Elise would be okay with. So he decided to tell her first. They were at her apartment. Kai was asleep. It was late. Marcus laid out everything he'd found. The emails, the pattern of threats, the identities of the people orchestrating the campaign against her. Elise listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was silent for a long time. "They want me to resign," she said finally. "Yes," Marcus said. "And if I don't resign, they'll keep threatening me," Elise said. "Yes." "And you want to go to the authorities," Elise said. "I think you should," Marcus said. "This is serious, this is criminal." "If I do that," Elise said, "the company will be in chaos. Everything will come out. My mother's corruption, the board members' conspiracy, all of it will be public. The company will lose value. People will lose their jobs." "People are already going to lose their jobs if you restructure the company," Marcus said. "That's the cost of fixing what was broken." "I know," Elise said. "But if I go public with all of this, it happens faster. It's more chaotic. It's more destructive." She stood up and walked to the window. The Atlanta skyline glowed beneath her. "My mother built this company from nothing," Elise said. "She worked 18-hour days. She sacrificed everything. And in the end, she sold her soul to keep it profitable. And now I have to choose between destroying what she built or becoming like her." "You're not becoming like her," Marcus said. "You're choosing the difficult path instead of the easy path. That's not the same thing." "How do you know?" Elise asked. "How do you know I'm not just telling myself that to feel better about destroying everything?" "Because I know you," Marcus said. He stood and walked to her. He put his hands on her shoulders and turned her around to face him. "You're not Catherine Coleman. You're someone better. Someone who actually cares about integrity instead of profit." Elise looked up at him, and her eyes were filled with tears. "If I do this," she said, "if I go public with everything, I need to know that you'll be there with me." "I will be," Marcus said. I promise. And he meant it. The next morning, Elise called a press conference. She stood at a podium in the Coleman Technologies headquarters and she told the truth. All of it. Her mother's corruption, the board's conspiracy, the threats against her, the systemic issues within the company that had been hidden for years. She announced that she was turning over all evidence to the FBI. She announced that she was restructuring the company to operate with complete transparency and ethical standards going forward. She announced that several executives would be resigning due to conflicts of interest. And she announced that if the board had a problem with her leadership, they were welcome to vote her out. The media exploded. The story dominated every news outlet for weeks. The stock price dropped significantly, but something else happened too. Employees at Coleman Technologies started speaking up about how toxic the company culture had been under Catherine Coleman. They talked about being pressured to act unethically. They talked about discrimination and harassment and corruption they'd witnessed. They started telling the truth. And slowly, the company began to heal. The board voted. Elise kept her position. The 3 board members who'd been part of the conspiracy resigned. Richard Hammond faced legal charges. The FBI opened an investigation. It was chaos and destruction, but it was honest chaos and honest destruction. And through all of it, Marcus was there. He helped Elise navigate the media frenzy. He helped her deal with the emotional fallout of publicly accusing her dead mother of corruption. He helped her rebuild the company on principles of integrity and transparency. And somewhere in the middle of all that chaos, they fell in love. Marcus just helped Elise blow up her entire world. He helped her do the right thing even though it was the hardest possible choice. But now they have to figure out what comes next. They have to navigate being together when Marcus is a security guard and Elise is a billionaire CEO. They have to figure out if they can actually build a life together when their worlds are so different. And they have to figure out whether Marcus should stay as her consultant or if he should go back to his old life, back to the simplicity he knew before Elise changed everything. 3 months later, Marcus was sitting in Elise's office when she asked him the question that changed everything. "Move in with me," she said. They'd been dating officially for 6 weeks. It had been quiet and private and beautiful. They went on dates. They spent time with Kai. They'd started planning a future together. But moving in together was a big step. "You want me to move into your apartment?" Marcus asked. "I want you to move in with me," Elise said. "And I want to know if you'll consider leaving the security consulting work." "And do what?" Marcus asked. "Be the chief of integrity for Coleman Technologies," Elise said. "It's a real position. I'm creating it. The company needs someone who understands ethics, who understands people, who can help us rebuild our culture. I need you." Marcus was quiet. He was thinking about his old life, the security job that paid the bills, the stability of knowing exactly what he was going to do every day. "What about Kai?" he asked. "What about her?" Elise asked. "She's had a difficult life," Marcus said. "Moving, changing schools, changing my job, all while I'm dating someone. I don't want her to feel like her life is unstable." "Your life would be more stable," Elise said. "You'd make more money, you'd work in a supportive environment, and Kai would have more of you. You wouldn't be working nights and weekends anymore." Marcus knew she was right. He also knew that this was a moment where he had to be honest with himself. "I'm scared," he said. "Of what?" Elise asked. "That I'll fail," Marcus said. "That I'll take this job and I'll be in over my head and I'll let you down. That I'll let the company down." Elise sat on the edge of her desk and looked at him. "You've already proven you can do this. You helped me navigate the hardest 3 months of my life. You helped me rebuild an entire company. If you can do that, you can do anything." "I had a good teacher," Marcus said, gesturing to her. "You had me because you trusted me. Who's going to trust me in a position like that?" "I am," Elise said, "and that's enough." Marcus said yes to the job. He said yes to moving in with Elise. He said yes to leaving his security job and starting a new career. He said yes to stepping into a world he never thought he'd belong to. What he didn't say yes to was getting married. Not yet. He wanted to make sure this was real before he made that commitment. He wanted to make sure that his love for Elise wasn't just gratitude for the opportunity she'd given him. Elise was patient, she understood. But 6 months into his new job, things started to get complicated. Marcus was brilliant at what he did. He rebuilt Coleman Technology's ethics department from the ground up. He created policies that prioritized both profitability and integrity. He helped establish a culture where employees felt safe speaking up about problems. The company didn't just recover, it flourished. The stock price climbed higher than it had been in years. Employees were happier. Customers trusted the brand. Everything Elise had hoped would happen actually happened. But success brought its own set of problems. Power players started showing up at Elise's office. Men and women with money and connections and agendas. They wanted to know what Elise's plans were for expansion. They wanted to know if she was going to go public. They wanted to know if she'd consider selling the company. One of them in particular became persistent. A man named David Sterling who'd made his fortune in private equity. He wanted to buy Coleman Technologies. "She's doing well," David told Marcus one day when they crossed paths in the building. "But she's young. She's a woman. The industry is ruthless. I could help her. I could buy the company and take it to the next level." "She doesn't want to sell," Marcus said. "Everyone wants to sell if the price is right," David said. He smiled, but his eyes were cold. "And the price will be very right. Billions. She could retire. She could do whatever she wants. She could spend more time with you and your daughter instead of killing herself with work." Marcus didn't like the way David said his daughter's name, like he'd been investigating them, like he knew things about their personal lives. That evening he told Elise. "David Sterling has been approaching me," Marcus said, "trying to convince me that you should sell." "He's been calling me too," Elise said. She was tired. She was always tired these days. The weight of running a massive company was pressing down on her in ways that showed themselves in small moments. The slight tremor of her hands when she held her coffee, the dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. "What do you want to do?" Marcus asked. "I don't want to sell," Elise said. "But I'm tired, Marcus. I'm so tired. Some days I think about just handing it all over to David and being done with it." "Then sell," Marcus said. "If it's making you this unhappy, sell." "I can't," Elise said. "You know why? The company means something. It means something to the people who work here. It means something to the industry. Selling it to David Sterling would be like selling my soul. He doesn't care about integrity. He cares about profit." "So what do you want to do?" Marcus asked again. "I want you to help me." Elise said, "Like you've always done. I want you to tell me what's right and I want you to help me do it." Marcus had heard this before, and every time he'd told her what was right. But he was starting to realize that maybe he wasn't always right. Maybe integrity was more complicated than he thought. Here's what Elise didn't know about Marcus Johnson. After his wife died, Marcus didn't just grieve. He fell into a depression so deep that he almost didn't survive it. He thought about leaving his daughter with Miss Diane and just disappearing. He thought about ending it all. What saved him wasn't therapy or medication or time. What saved him was a moment of clarity when he was sitting in a bar late one night, drunk, thinking about suicide. An older man had sat down beside him and asked him why he was crying. Marcus had told him everything, and the man had told Marcus something that stuck with him. "The world wants you to believe that happiness is something you find," the man said, "but happiness is something you build. You build it one choice at a time, one honest choice at a time." That man had bought Marcus a coffee, and they'd talked until the sun came up. Then they went their separate ways, and Marcus never saw him again. But those words had stayed with him, and for 7 years Marcus had built his happiness through honest choices. He'd chosen to be the best father he could be. He'd chosen to work hard. He'd chosen to live with integrity. Meeting Elise had complicated that, because suddenly he had someone else to build happiness for, Suddenly, his choices affected someone other than himself and his daughter. And the more successful Elise became, the more Marcus started to wonder if he was the right person for her. If a security guard, even one who'd become a chief of integrity, could really stand beside a billionaire CEO. It came 6 weeks after David Sterling's first offer. Elise was at her desk late one night, working on a new proposal for a philanthropic foundation she wanted to create. Marcus was with her, reviewing the financial projections. Kai was asleep in the guest room. It was just the three of them in the quiet office. Then Elise's phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and her face went pale. "What is it?" Marcus asked. "It's the hospital," Elise said. She answered the call and her whole body went rigid as she listened. "When? How? Okay, I'm coming." She hung up and looked at Marcus with eyes full of shock and pain. "My uncle," she said. "He was in a car accident. He's in the hospital. They don't know if he's going to make it." Elise's uncle was the person she'd been afraid would take over the company if she stepped down. But he was also her family. He was her mother's brother. He was the last piece of her mother she had left in the world. They rushed to the hospital. Her uncle, William Coleman, was in intensive care. The car accident had been serious. He had internal bleeding, broken bones, head trauma. The doctors weren't sure he'd survive the night. Elise sat beside his bed and cried. She held his hand and told him stories about their childhood. She told him she was sorry for all the times they disagreed. She told him she loved him. Marcus stood in the doorway and watched. He understood loss. He'd been there. He knew what it was like to watch someone you love slip away. Around midnight, William opened his eyes. They focused on Elise. "Hey," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Hey," Elise said, squeezing his hand gently. "I'm here. You're going to be okay." "No, I'm not," William said. He was lucid, aware, accepting. "But that's okay. Listen to me, Elise, the company, you have to keep it. You have to build it into something great. Not for money, for meaning." "I will," Elise said, crying. "And that man," William said, looking at Marcus. "The security guard, he loves you. Don't let him go. Good men are rare. When you find one, you hold on." William Coleman died an hour later. Elise broke. She collapsed and Marcus caught her. He held her while she fell apart. He held her while the grief consumed her. He held her and he didn't let go. Elise took 2 weeks off to deal with her uncle's death and the funeral. During that time, she barely spoke. She moved through the world like a ghost, like she wasn't quite present. Marcus tried to help. He made sure Kai was okay. He made sure Elise ate. He made sure she was sleeping. But there was nothing he could do to make the pain go away. It was during this time that David Sterling made his final offer. He sent it via email, addressed to Elise, but copying Marcus. The offer was to buy Coleman Technologies for $15 billion, enough money for Elise to live comfortably for the rest of her life, enough money to fund any philanthropic foundation she wanted, enough money to step away from the pressure and the pain and the responsibility. He even included a note. "I know you're grieving right now. I know you're tired. Let me take this burden off your shoulders. You deserve to rest." Marcus read the email and felt something shift inside him. He realized in that moment that he'd been wrong about something fundamental. He'd been assuming that the right choice was always the difficult choice. That integrity meant suffering. That doing the right thing meant sacrificing happiness. But what if that wasn't true? What if sometimes the right choice was actually the happy choice? What if selling the company wasn't a betrayal of Catherine Coleman or William Coleman or the thousands of employees who worked there? What if sometimes the right thing was taking care of yourself? He went to Elise and he asked her a question he'd never expected to ask. "Do you want to sell?" he said. They were sitting on her balcony, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. Elise had been staring at nothing for hours. "Why would you ask me that?" she said. "Because David Sterling is right," Marcus said. "You don't deserve this amount of suffering. You've done enough. You've fixed the company. You've created a culture of integrity. You've honored your mother's legacy by transforming it into something better. Maybe it's time to let someone else carry it forward. Elise looked at him like he'd betrayed her. "You're the one who told me to do the hard thing," she said. "You're the one who said integrity was worth the sacrifice." "I was wrong," Marcus said, and it was hard to say, but he knew it was true. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I held you to a standard I didn't hold myself to. I asked you to suffer for your principles when I would have run away from that same suffering." "What are you saying?" Elise asked. "I'm saying that if you want to sell the company, I support it," Marcus said. "I'm saying that you don't have to prove anything to me or to the world. I'm saying that sometimes the wise choice is knowing when you've done enough." Elise was quiet for a long time. "No," she said finally. "I don't want to sell. I want to keep it. But I want to keep it because I choose to, not because I'm supposed to. I want to keep it because it matters to me, not because it was my mother's or my uncle's legacy." "Okay," Marcus said. "But I want to make a change," Elise said. "I want to step back from the day-to-day management. I want to hire a CEO who can run the operations while I focus on the vision and the philanthropy. I want to work less and live more." "That's smart," Marcus said. "And I want you to help me do it," Elise said. "Not as a consultant who thinks he knows what's right, as a partner who loves me and will tell me the truth even when the truth is complicated." Marcus nodded. "I can do that." 6 months later, Elise hired a new CEO, a woman named Patricia Johnson who'd spent 20 years building companies from the ground up. Patricia was brilliant and ethical and knew exactly how to handle the pressure of running a company that demanded both profit and integrity. Elise stepped back. She still served as the chairman of the board, but she had more time. She had Kai. She had Marcus. And on a beautiful spring evening, Marcus proposed to her on the same rooftop where they'd first talked about Elise's fears about running the company. He didn't have an expensive ring. He had a simple band made of white gold with a diamond that he'd paid for with his first paycheck from Coleman Technologies. He got down on one knee, and Kai stood beside him, holding a sign that said, "Will you marry us?" because he'd asked his daughter's permission first. Elise said yes, and she cried, but this time the tears were happy. The moral of this story: here's what Marcus and Elise learned through all of this. Integrity isn't about always doing the hardest thing. It's about being honest with yourself about what matters and then making choices that reflect that. Sometimes integrity means pushing yourself to be better. Sometimes it means accepting that you've done enough and it's time to rest. The world is full of people who want to tell you what you should do. Bosses and family members and friends and strangers. But the only person who really knows what's right for you is you. And when you listen to your own truth instead of everyone else's expectations, that's when you find real happiness. Marcus and Elise didn't get rich and famous. Well, Elise did, but that's not what made her happy. What made her happy was knowing that she'd built a company that treated people with respect. What made Marcus happy was working somewhere that valued integrity as much as he did. What made both of them happy was knowing that they'd chosen each other, not because of what they could get from each other, but because they made each other better. And Kai grew up watching two people choose love and honesty and integrity over everything else. So that's what she learned was important. That's what she valued. And in a world that often teaches people to compromise themselves for success, that was the greatest gift they could have given her. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this community.